Good day, everyone. I am John Samuel J. Yap from the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, and I'm going to present our paper entitled Ramifications for Press Freedom, a Comparative News Framing Analysis of the ABS-CBN Shutdown and Franchise Denial Reportage into Philippine Newscasts. I am presenting on behalf of Dr. Edmund G. Centeno, my co-author and advisor for this study. He is an associate professor at the College of Development Communication in UP Los Baños. So to give you a background here about the issue, it has been more than a year and a half since the Philippines' largest TV network went off the air on May 5, 2020. It was forced to shut down its broadcast operations after the network failed to renew its franchise in a Duterte-allied Congress. ABS-CBN is known to be critical of President Rodrigo Duterte's administration and policies. In his speeches and pronouncements, he is known to spew anti-media rhetoric towards the network, as well as Rappler and the Philippine Daily Inquirer. After a series of 12 hearings, the committee voted to deny the franchise of ABS-CBN and killed with finality any chances of the filed renewal bills in the current Congress to even proceed to the plenary. For additional context, under the Philippine laws, there is a need for television and radio companies to secure legislative franchises in Congress because there would be chaos in the airwaves without government regulation. Since it's such a huge TV network here in the country, in the Philippines, it's like closing down America's NBC, ABC, or CBS, or even shutting down Malaysia's TV3, Thailand's Channel 7, or Indonesia's RCTI. Having said that, local and international news programs have covered the issue since the beginning, also known as flagship national newscasts. These local primetime news programs in the Philippines include ABS-CBN's very own TV Patrol and GMA Network's 24 Oras, its major competitor. Given the primetime influence of the mentioned news programs, their coverage on the issue could present relevant data on the existing and developing censorship propagated by the state, and worse, the stifling of free speech and silencing critical press. Furthermore, studying the reportage of the ABS-CBN franchise renewal could explain the chilling effect this issue could bring in the media industry. This means that the framing analysis of this study could potentially answer inquiries on the state of press freedom in the country. The interaction between political and media actors constitute the interaction of political and media systems, as well as its respective cultures. The study aims to analyze how TV Patrol and 24 Horas framed the ABS-CBN shutdown on May 5, 2020, and franchise denial on July 10, 2020. Specifically, it aims to first describe the news items in terms of length, order of presentation, format, and actors. Determine whether or not the characteristics of the news items differ from one another, and then find out the most dominant frame used. And lastly, compare the news framing of the two newscasts. The theoretical framework of this study is fundamentally guided by news framing and agenda setting. Framing studies presume that how an issue is packaged has an influence on how it is grasped by the public, according to De Vries. Using Semetko and Valkenburg frames would determine how an issue is framed using framing devices on a responsibility, human interest, morality, conflict, and economy. These generic frames, alongside issue-specific frames, could determine attitudinal and behavioral effects among the viewers. How the public views a particular issue is influenced by the way the media puts emphasis on an issue and the approach it puts on specific aspects of the topic. If these cues are repeated frequently, it effectively communicates the weight of importance of a particular topic. For the research design, deductive scientific approach was used by using a mixed method of quantitative, qualitative, and manual clustering methods. This is commonly used when analyzing media content, particularly on how words and text are used and outlined. In this study, variables include the length of the news items, as well as the format, order, presentation, and actors in play. The frames, as defined by Semetko and Valkenburg, were also attributed to be variables in addition. The first set mentioned are the independent variables, as they are the presumed cause that may affect the other variable, which is called the dependent variable or the presumed effect. The framing variables include frames that discuss responsibility, conflict, human interest, morality, and human consequence. To give you an overview, here is the summarized process. First is access. The episodes were accessed through the video on demand platform of both networks, namely ABS-CBN News and GMA News, as they were readily accessible online, particularly on YouTube. Next is transcribe. All related news items were transcribed from both newscasts on two events, the shutdown and franchise denial. Next is generate. Using a transcription software, the data generated a rundown with timestamps of the transcript along with the numbering of order. Specific actors were indicated, and the verbatim lines were also included as seen and heard on television. Next is code. The produced rundown transcripts were marked with coded segment qualifiers and framing devices. Then next is analyze. The data were then analyzed using QDA Miner. It's basically it's a qualitative data analysis software that examined the length, order of presentation, format, actors involved, and frames used in the news items. Let's proceed to the results. For the length, ABS-CBN allotted more time in covering their plight for the shutdown and franchise renewal with 133.614 minutes, while GMA Network only allotted about 43.201 minutes on their rival network shutdown and franchise denial, a difference of 90.413 minutes. Both episodes on both newscasts show that TV Patrol allotted more time in reporting homogeneous topics compared to 24 Oras. So in this study, homogeneous topics refer to either news reports or guest interviews that are corresponding in parallel in both programs, in both episodes. This means that content-wise, they are similar and comparable in quantitative parameters, but they are qualitatively different in delivery and framing. For the order of presentation, overall, based on the data we have collected, it can be noted that both newscasts place the majority of related news items during the respective first gaps. TV Patrol's May 5 episode has no commercial breaks, meaning they allotted their whole episode to cover that issue alone on the day of the shutdown. Its July 10 episode, however, has 4 commercial breaks. Meanwhile, 24 Oras has 4 and 5 commercial breaks on May 5 and July 10, respectively. The lengths of these breaks were not determined in this part because the live stream of TV Patrol on its video on demand platform YouTube removed the breaks portion. Next is the format. News report was the most used format in TV Patrol with 28.13%. Summarized statements were the most used in 24 Oras with 44.44%. Overall, the most used format is the summarized statement with 26%, followed by the news report with 22%. The least used is the contextual video file, which was only used by ABS-CBN. Next, for the actors. TV Patrol had a total combined number of 66 named actors, while 24 Horas had only 17 in both episodes. TV Patrol gave most of its airtime to 21 elected officials, while the latter gave the most to 6 public officials. On May 5 episode of both newscasts, 85.71% of TV Patrol's live guests were affirmative to the renewal, while 75% of live guests in 24 Horas were leaning towards the shutdown. For the framing, the responsibility frame was the most used frame by TV Patrol with 40.60%, while the conflict frame was the most used in 24 Horas with 55.6%. Aside from that, ABS-CBN also appealed to the emotion of the public with 31.30% in the human interest frame, while GMA had only one entry. Only TV Patrol used the economic frame between the two newscasts. Both did not use any morality frame. For the overall framing, basically ABS-CBN highlighted their news items in such a way that a certain level of executive and legislative jurisdiction caused the shutdown and franchise denial. GMA Network, on the other hand, presented their news items that highlighted disagreements between groups and individuals. In conclusion, TV Patrol exerted more emphasis and weight on the events that unfolded on May 5 and July 10 based on the results of this study. The way TV Patrol produced its stories infers that the newscast is acting on the defense mode. Given the situation of the network's franchise, this positioning is not inherently partial, since the facts about the allegations against itself are already laid out. Additionally, its defense position is clearly conveyed by giving lengthy exposure to those who are leaning towards the franchise renewal, as manifested in the salience cues. On the other hand, 24 Horas emphasized more about ABS-CBN's alleged offenses against the law by using the conflict frame as its most abundant angle. Among its consequential news items include giving exposure to pro-shutdown interviewees, statements of which were already debunked with facts. Generally, the framing of 24 Horas on the issue is not an isolated case per se, but an indicator of the emerging newscast internal cautiousness, or more specifically, self-censorship, which manifested across the salience cues analyzed. Therefore, the immediate response of GMA to the issue in the form of news coverage is a key indicator to whether the chilling effect is indeed happening and affecting other media companies. The bigger picture that this study suggests is the way newscasts put emphasis on a subject matter and the approach it puts on specific aspects of the topic influences how the public perceives a particular issue. Although these editorial choices are internally decided, external factors like politics could affect them as well. In the context of this paper, this means that the nuances and salience cues surrounding the news framing of newscasts could provide a general overview of the state of media freedom in the country. What makes ABS-CBN shutdown and franchise denial an issue of press freedom is the very fact that it sends a chilling message across all media organizations. With today's blurring of lines between dissent and sedition, this message transcends as a manifestation of censorship, hiding under the veneer of legality and weaponization of law. Through instigating strings of attacks against critical media, the government is attempting to silence anyone who dares to ask for accountability and transparency. That ends my presentation. Thank you very much. Once again, I am John Samuel Yap. Have a great day.